What's up, Internet? You're tuned into a very special episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast where this week, or this day, we already had a show this week. Today, Steve and I are going to be getting into a full spoiler discussion of the first season of HBO's The Last of Us. Of course, we talked about episode 1 a couple weeks back on the show proper, but now, we get the chance to kind of dig into everything that happened, share all of our biggest thoughts, and then also I want to spend a little time speculating about what comes next based on the news that we got this week. So, Steve, let's kick things off. I mean, after getting through the finale last night, how do you feel about season 1?
I can't decide. So, initially, I was like, "Oh yeah, this was great," and I still think it's the best adaptation of a video game we've got. Period. Whether that's TV or movies, I think this is the best we've ever had.
I think that's fair to say.
The series started out. I think the series started out extremely strong. I loved the first 3 episodes. I think it had a bit of a dip in the middle for me, and I feel like the finale wasn't as impactful for me. But that could just be because I knew what was coming, and we'd already had the debate 10, 11 years ago about the ending of The Last of Us. So it's just like, I kind of knew it was coming. But even the scene when, the famous scene where he bursts into the operating theater, it didn't feel like it had the same impact. That scene didn't feel as argumentative and as aggressive.
Ooh, I see. I don't agree with that. I thought it was really interesting because I definitely could see what you're saying in terms of having some of the impact removed because you know what's going to happen. Like that certainly removes some of the drama of the situation. But I think the way that it was shot, and the way that it's portrayed was extremely interesting because you talk about the debate that happened, back when the game originally released, right? And I think there was a big conversation about, the morality of Joel's choice, right? Whether what he did was right or wrong or what have you, which I don't really think is the point, but that's fine. I think it's very interesting that I felt like they took a hard line here and they were portraying Joel's action as more evil than I think it feels in the game, which I thought was interesting because in
the game, it's clear that he's a father figure, right? But I feel like they did a pretty good job in the TV series of setting that up.
Yeah, it's less that. It's more.
Again, I don't feel like that had the same impact as the game for me. It feels like it got a little lost in some of the other stories that Joel kind of shut himself off to the world, and then this is the one person that he cares about. I kind of got that on the episode with David, and when he saved Ellie, and she's in a panic, right? And she's hitting him, and he's just like, "Oh, it's me, come on, baby girl, let's get you out of here," kind of thing. I feel like that's when it kind of shifted the paradigm. You could see that in his brain, something had clicked. It's just oh, I actually do really care about her, and she really cares about me, and we're here to kind of save each other. And it's more than just she's a package that I'm delivering to the Fireflies now.
I think they did well with all that. It's one of those things where when you're oh, it's not as impactful as it feels in the game. It's well, yeah, because it's it's shorter. I don't think you can't really compare them, right? It's in what's the hold on one second. Let me figure out this. Let me see. So yeah, the length of the original Last of Us is 14 hours. Right,
it's about the same length, but then we don't have the whole hour with Bill and Frank. I gotta say though,
and that's also not counting Left Behind, which is a whole episode, right? So it's
yes, that's true. Yeah.
Ultimately, you're looking at there's 9 episodes, and 2 of them get used to explore the past or other characters. So it's really only 6 or 7 hours. It's about half the time, which I think
is fine because I feel like there's a lot of non-story in The Last of Us, a lot of sneaking scenes, there's a lot of moving through a single building.
I also think that leads to what you're talking about, where there's a lot of opportunity for character interaction and the development of their relationship in the small interacty moments. I think about one of the and it's not a major beat in the story, but it is a pretty big character beat, right? Where one of the first times that Joel I think starts acting more paternal towards Ellie is when he realizes she can't swim and he has to like help her with like the crate and everything, and that's like a big mechanic in the first game, and like that's a thing that's like not represented here, right? So I think there's like a lot of little moments like that that are gonna just land differently because you've spent different time with the characters in different ways. But I feel like with the ending, like I think in the game there's this sense that you're fighting an uphill battle, right? Because it's like you're in this room, you're pinned down, you're like fighting tooth and nail to get to Ellie and have it be,
Yeah, and it didn't feel like that. It felt like Joel was like a superhero.
It's
he
surgical.
was like bam, 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 bam.
Yeah, and that's the thing though, is like I think that does change the tone of it a little bit, right? Where like, even like they make a point of showing the moment where there's somebody who's like, hey, like puts the gun down and is like, yo, I'm good, I'm not gonna, and he shoots him anyway, right? And like Marlene,
but that's been like a couple of trends throughout the series, right?
Yeah, it's
just like you're just gonna carry on coming after us. And
yeah,
that's from previous experience that Joel's had.
No, and that's the thing though, right? Is I think that's why it feels different. Is that like it's not that Joel is a different character, but I think because we are not Joel and we can't project onto him, right? Because you're not the one with the sticks, and you're not the one, fighting this uphill battle and overcoming it by the skin of your teeth. It is like, no, like Joel's the hero, and what happens is he ices every person in this place, and he doesn't get a scratch.
Some people don't consider him the hero. Some people consider him a villain.
I mean,
after the ending of The Last of Us.
And I think that's the thing, though, right? Is like I think that episode wants you to have that discussion, right? And it wants you to be like, oh, like I have thought of Joel as the hero this whole time, and now he did this really, this messed up thing, right? I think even if you,
I think the story is a little bit more nuanced than that, because I feel like throughout the whole show, we meet these groups of people that are doing, horrific things, right?
Yeah. Pretty much everybody with Tommy's group, right? Like that's the only.
They're all doing it for the good of themselves. They're all just trying to survive. Bill and Frank, Bill set up all of those traps to keep anyone out. He would have killed Frank, I think, in a heartbeat if there wasn't like an attraction there, or there wasn't some kind of connection. And then you see David's crew, right? And they're just trying to get along, and they're trying to feed people. And he's done it. He's controlled the people in a way he knows, which is to turn it into like a cult and turn it into like a semi-religion.
Well, and with violence, right? Like
with violence, yeah, he's keeping people in check with violence. And then it's cold. There's no food. So what do? We turn to eating the only resource we've got left, which is people. And that's like the whole story of the show, right? That's why it's called The Last of Us. It's the last people alive, where everyone's trying to survive. You see that the QZ that kind of gets taken down, right, by that woman. I think is it in Pittsburgh in the game, but I don't know where it is in the show. Might be Colorado, maybe. And then you kind of see her, right? She's like ruthless, but you see that scene of vulnerability of, oh, I can't do this. I'm not a leader. It was my brother. He's the one that did this. He's the one that took me there. And you have that guy that's like, no, you're the one that took down the QZ. You're the one that did this. And it's a similar story with her as the story in The Last of Us 2, which we won't go into in much detail, but it's like a story of revenge. It's a story where someone killed her brother, and they're kind of the prime suspect. They're trying to sniff them out, and that person's Joel, and they're trying to find him, right? In the same way, that's the same story with David. Like Joel's killed someone, or Ellie's killed someone, and they're trying to find him, and it's like that story of revenge. It's like the eye for an eye kind of thing.
Sure, yeah, but I think even, I don't know, like I feel like when it comes to the Joel of it all, like I don't, like that's certainly a broader theme in The Last of Us, but I really don't think that's like the point of any of the stories, because I definitely don't think that that's the point of The Last of Us Part 2. Like I think that's like the popular, oh yeah, like the story is that like revenge is bad, where like eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind, and it's like that's one of the themes, but I think the bigger theme of that story is that like there's no such thing as good guys and bad guys, right? Like there There are people on every...
Which I think is the story in The Last of Us. It's like, is Joel a good guy or is he a bad guy? He's just out for himself. He's protecting someone that he loves versus he could potentially save the whole world.
That's the thing, though. No, and you cut me off before I got to make this point. I don't think that's actually the thing, though, right? Like, if you ask me, like, what is the bad thing that Joel did? It's not that he saved Ellie's life, right? Like, I can justify that choice where, like, he, you know, and it's a selfish choice for sure, right? Like, to be like, forget it. Like, there's an opportunity to save the whole world, but I want to save this one person that I care about. That is an inherently...
But did we have that line? Did we have that line in the show that we have in the game where she talks about wanting to have purpose? And
yeah, she says that it's all of this has to mean something. That's what she says, right? And they make a point of pointing out that Joel knows what he's doing is wrong, and that Ellie wouldn't want him to do this, but he does it anyway, and then he lies about it. That's really the thing that's fucked up, I think. It's less the whole, oh, you know, like ruined our chance for a cure. It's like, we don't know that would have worked anyway, right? That's always been my justification, is that, like, sure, like, maybe that would have happened, but also maybe Ellie would have just died on the operating table and nothing would have gotten solved anyway, right? Like, that's the other way that goes. And I can understand Joel not being willing to take that gamble, right? But where the fucked up thing lies, in my opinion, is taking away Ellie's choice about her life to spare himself loss again, right? Is that he can't go through the grief of losing another daughter, so he takes away Ellie's choice to, like, have her life mean something, which is what she wanted, and, like, then lies about it and perpetuates that lie for years, right? And
but did she only do that because she felt like she had nothing left? That she lost Riley, she went through that whole thing. She lost her mother at
but that's the thing, is,
and she was left alone, right?
That's not Joel's decision to make, though, right? Like, it's not his choice to be like, this is what you're like, I'm deciding that you're not going to give away your life, you're going to go live after this, right? And, like, again,
but is she old enough to make that decision?
I mean, that's a question, I guess, but, like, I think at the end of the day, like, you know, it's why is it Joel's call?
Yeah.
You know? And again, I'm not saying that he's evil or anything like that, but it's like the choice he makes is a selfish one. It's motivated by his own inability to deal with more grief. And again, like, I want to be very clear. In the same position, I can't imagine that I would have acted differently. Right? Like, I think if the game, if the game gave me a choice,
I don't know that you would have killed Marlene.
Probably
and been
not.
That brutal.
That's
just, like,
bad.
shot her when she's, like, on the floor and she's like, please, no, don't. And he's like, nah.
And he does it so, like, thoughtlessly. But it's also like, I get where he's coming from, where it's like, yeah, like, if they're alive, what are they going to do? They're going to come knocking at some point. And either...
Yeah, but the Fireflies don't end with Marlene.
No.
Like, she's not the only one, right?
No, but
a lot of people knew about this plan.
Yeah, but only the people in the hospital, right? Like, she said it was a tight-knit group that were aware of Ellie's condition, and I'm pretty sure Joel killed every one of them. Except, you know, well, no, because even think about it, right? Even and full spoilers for everything in The Last of Us. We said that at the top. Think about it in Last of Us Part 2. I don't think Abby knows that Ellie's immune. She knows that, well, maybe she does. But what she knows is that her dad was a doctor and was working on this thing and then died, right? I don't even know that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that anyone is
I don't
left.
think that she knows what it. I don't think she knows what it was.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's just that he was a doctor and he was a good man because he was a doctor. Like, doctors are good people, you know.
Well,
so
and again, from what we know about
either.
him, it seems like he was, right? Like, in the flashbacks of that game and everything, like, they show moments of him being.
I wonder if that's going to change in the part 2 of the TV series. I said they're going to make some changes.
I have to imagine we're going to get to know that character better.
Yeah.
You know?
And how he came to that conclusion that operating on her brain and taking a look and pulling this thing out is going to be the solution. Because I don't feel like that is a solution. Like, how does one come to that conclusion? And why would they not have
You're not
tried
a doctor, what do you know?
Yeah, why would like the Fedra guys not have tried that? The Fedra doctors that, you know, Ellie can't be the only one that's ever been immune.
They didn't
over
know.
The course of 10 years.
I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, could she have been? Like, I don't know. It's not impossible that there was another person, but it's like, is there another person and anybody knows about it? Like, what's the context of that? How long did they live? It's like, it's so hard. Like, I see what you're saying, but I feel like in a world like this, it's so easy to make logical leaps like that of like, oh, but she couldn't have possibly been the only one. It's like, yeah, but she could have been the only one with anybody who had any resources to do anything about it, right? Like,
Yeah, that's true.
like
Yeah.
who's to say that there wasn't some person who was immune who got a fucking axe in the head from a raider, and then that was that, right? Like, it's like,
Yeah.
Ellie, I think, is special because, or not because of, but I guess in this context, right? Like, the value comes from Marlene's ability to do something with it, right? Like immunity is only valuable if you have somebody who can create a cure, right? And she did, right up until Joel shot him in the face.
Yeah.
But
it's kind of crazy. I want to talk a little bit about the cameos that we saw from Troy
Troy
Baker and Ashley Johnson. I was surprised when I saw Troy, and I was like, oh, cool, they found like a decent meaty part for him.
yeah,
But fuck me, Ashley's part was perfect.
she was
Because
so
she
good
looked
as
so
Anna.
she looked so much like Bella Ramsey. I was like, what are they gonna do with her? And to make her Ellie's mother just makes so much sense. It was really cool to see. I was kind of taken aback when we saw her at the beginning of the finale running through the woods. I was like, oh, this is really fucking cool.
Did you hear like the context of how that scene came to be? It's pretty interesting.
No.
So
I
in
didn't.
the they do the little like behind the scene thing at the end of the episodes. There was a part where Craig Mazin was talking about it, and apparently the story is there that Druckmann had wanted to explore Anna's story more because he thought it was important, and it like didn't quite make it into the game. But like after part 2 was released, he wrote a short story about Anna, and the goal was to like eventually adapt it into like a short, like a short animated film, or to make DLC about it or something. But like the plans just kind of fell apart. And while they were developing the story, or the show, I should say, Druckmann told Mazin about it and shared the story with him, and he thought it was so like beautiful that he was like, oh, we got to put that in the last episode. Like, that's got to be, like, we got to represent this part of the story. It's like kind of a cool full circle moment, right? It's like the last episode, and this is kind of this. I feel like the last episode is where you really see Ellie change from the character that we know from part 1, or the majority of part 1, right, or season 1 here, to who she becomes in part 2, right? And
she seems totally broken.
Yeah.
In the finale, she's lost all hope. Even at the beginning, it's only when she sees the giraffe that kind of her mood picks up. But that's just like a fleeting moment.
It's a moment. Yeah, it's like a flash of like the person she was before this trauma.
And then after she's been saved and she realizes the world's not going to change and she's stuck here and this is her life now, so she's got to deal with all of the horror in the world. You can see on her face that she just can't bear it. And the performances were phenomenal throughout the whole of the series.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge part of it. Like, I really loved the series, and I think it did what an adaptation needs to do, right? Like, I think it justified its existence as something separate from the game. And I think that was how it did it, right? Was like taking
time right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Just even the opening section where it's like the flashback to the 1970s, where they've got that person talking about, oh, it's going to be a fungal infection that causes
ends humanity.
A virus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think they did a really good job of like really zooming in on character, right? And like taking opportunities to do things like that. And I think, like looking at the beginning of the finale and like the way that, like you said, right? The way that you see Joel's like efforts to re-engage her, I thought that felt very true, and I thought Bella and Pedro did a really good job there of kind of like it's like obviously this being a way more serious situation, but it feels like a very familiar like parent-child dynamic, right? Where it's like something's wrong and you know something's wrong, and it's like you don't want to push your child to talk too soon, right? So it's like he tries to, he tries to get her excited about the food that he finds. He tries to, get her to engage with him about like he wants to teach her the guitar, he wants to do this, he wants to do that, right? And like it's all these little chips in the armor, right? That like he's trying to reach out and make that connection, while she's clearly struggling, right? And it is like the giraffe moment, that finally gives that moment of like respite, and like they just did such a good job with that. That was one of the scenes I was most concerned about them not translating well, because I thought that's one of the most memorable moments in the first game for sure, right? Is like considering how dark so much of the narrative is, right? Like you have that one brief like shining moment that really feels like a breath of fresh air, and that like there is hope, there is still beauty in the world, there is still, and then that's kind of couched in the conversation that Joel has with Ellie, right? Where he's talking about, and I think this is what we're talking about the themes. This is what the theme of The Last of Us really is, right? Is he tells her the story about how he tried to kill himself, right? And he flinched and he missed, right? And her takeaway from that is, I get what you're saying. So you're saying time heals all wounds, right? And he says, no, it wasn't time that did it, right? It was Ellie. It was like opening himself up to care about someone again and allowing himself to be vulnerable to that hurt again.
Do you think it was Ellie? Because like I don't think we know the timeline of when that happened, but I feel like he had other people in his life prior to that. Like
Not
he had
really.
Tess,
Yeah,
and
but
he saw like I guess that was really kind of transactional. Even the stuff with Bill and Frank was transactional, right? And it wasn't really him that wanted to go there. It was Tess.
yeah, I think
interacting with
he
Frank on the
clearly
radio.
cared about Tess, right? He loved Tess, but I don't think it was the same, right? Like I think, especially when you think about the context of how he met Tess, right? Like it is during that dark period of his life where he was doing fucked up things to survive. And I think, to me, right, like the characterization I see there is that when Joel was, even when he was with Tess and Tommy and that group and everything, right, like he was surviving, but he wasn't living, right? Like the Joel, the person that he was, died when he lost his daughter. And at that point, he's kind of just become a machine, right? Like he's in survival mode, and it's do what you have to survive, right? And that's regardless of the emotional
but we
or
do know
ethical
the
toll
timeline
it
then.
takes inward, right? And you see Joel become a different person through their travels, and like I think that's explicitly what he's saying to her, is that like it's not that I just got over it because it was a long time ago. It's that I found a new reason to live, and that's you, that's us, right? It to me it echoes the moment with Lev in part 2, right? It's like, those are your people. You're my people, right? Like that's what it's about. It's not, it's I think all those other themes, every other thing that we explore in The Last of Us is set dressing, right? Like it's all themes of the world. It's broader themes that take place in the narrative, but I think that's the core of it, right? When I think about what The Last of Us is about, it's about like learning to live again and finding redemption through love, right? And finding a way to keep moving on when you feel like you've lost everything. That like the way that you rebuild is to like find love again, right? And I think you see that echoed in small ways, right? Like that's Bill's story, right? In episode 3 is like he had closed himself off from the world, and it's when he falls in love with Frank that he starts to live again.
And he was closed off from the world from even prior to that, right?
Exactly. It had nothing to do with the apocalypse. That's just who he was. And I think that even like cements that theme more cleanly, right? Is that it's not about the apocalypse. It's not about, the extreme tragic type of loss that Joel experiences in losing Sarah. It's anything, right? And for Bill, it was, isolating himself and repressing his identity and not being who he was, or not being, able
I
or
think it's more that he didn't wanna feel vulnerable ever,
sure,
and
yeah,
I feel like he didn't wanna let that guard down because he felt like the world was gonna end at any moment, and ultimately he proved to be right.
yeah, for
He
sure,
didn't wanna let anyone in, both physically and emotionally. Like,
right.
he didn't want anyone to enter his home, and he didn't want anyone to enter his life emotionally. And he makes an exception for Frank in both of those parts, right? He lets Frank into his home. He doesn't want Frank to play the piano and evoke emotion in Bill from playing the music and stuff because it reminded him of his mother. And I thought it was I that was my favorite episode by far. Episode 3 by far was my favorite episode. I thought the performances were just incredible, and I cried so much at multiple points in that, both
Yeah,
happy and sad tears.
same.
And it was just yeah, it was phenomenal. That was an absolutely phenomenal episode.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think that one stands out as being the best for sure. Um,
And I think maybe it's the best for fans of the game because it's a very much a story that we didn't know. But I also really like the Left Behind episode for other reasons of being a fan of the game because it was so faithful to the source material and it was like I was seeing the game again. I was seeing them act out the points in the shopping mall and going to the arcade and like having a good time and seeing that like connection again between Ellie and Riley and seeing her become vulnerable and realizing that she was going to lose a friend or potentially a romantic connection and and realizing that she's going to go away. She's never going to see her again.
and right,
And
and like that's that journey for her, right? Is losing Riley and then like learning to think to like move on and love again through having a relationship with
well, and
Joel.
having to kill Riley. Like, it wasn't just she lost Riley.
Yep,
It's that I guess that parallel with her mother, right? Where
sure.
Marlene has to shoot her and she's like, I can't kill you.
It's the same
I
thing, right?
can't
They're
do it.
best friends since childhood, and
Yeah.
it definitely echoes. I guess there's not the romantic angle there, but same, same difference. Um, yeah, yeah. I think I think it's generally pretty funny to me, considering like how I don't know. I feel like there's so much debate about the story of The Last of Us, and I feel like the themes are so clear, and it's like wild to me that like we debate about some of this stuff. I'm like, I feel like some of you didn't pay attention in your English classes enough, for your critical reading skills, but
I think people can interpret it however way they want and what it means to them. It's just, but I really do think the whole narrative again. It's really funny to me to see the finale being seen as like so divisive and whereas I just don't think it is. Like, I really feel like most people would do the exact same thing that Joel did for their son or their daughter, and that's how he sees Ellie at this point. It's just like, you are my daughter. You might not be flesh and blood, and we've only kind of had these months traveling across the country, but he's become to really care for her in the same way that he cared for Sarah,
yeah,
and that's the reason why he makes that decision. And it's very much like a snap decision. It feels like it was a gut instinct of no, fuck off. You're not gonna. Yeah, I've got to save her. There's no way you can do that to her. But yeah, it's strange to me that so many people are discussing it. But I do think the whole are we the bad guys, are we the good guys thing, that very much is explored more in part 2 of the game, and I'm sure it will be
yeah.
explored a lot more in series 2 and series 3 of the TV show.
Yeah, I guess that's the concern I have. It's like like you said, right? Like obviously every story is open to interpretation, but I think like some people are so hard lined in this idea that like Joel is a good guy and this is the right thing to do, and if you don't agree, then it's because you're not a parent and you don't get it. And it's like
Everything's a gray area,
yeah, yeah.
and
And I
I think
think
that's
that's
what the show and the game is trying to show.
right,
It's like
exactly.
everything's a gray area. Nothing is black and white in this world.
I think like talking about like whether or not it's the like morally correct thing to do is like the least interesting way you can engage with it, right? Like and like I understand the desire to be like, oh, what do you think about that decision, right? Like, would you do that? Not yeah, yes or no. It's like, yeah, that's cool, but I think if that's the only thing you're focusing on, you're kind of missing so much of the point of it and why he makes that choice, right? It's not just to be a twist that is surprising. It's like it's to say something, right? And it's to challenge your expectation as a reader, you know, or a viewer, whatever, you know, the one interacting with the piece, right? Because I think, you know, we talked about this, I think, in episode 1, right? Where, like, I think the show was trying to give you the thread of, like, hey, by the way, like, Joel's our leading man, but he's not like a hero in a traditional sense. You get that, right? And it's like, well, this is where that comes home to roost, right?
I mean, he's not a hero from the get-go.
Exactly.
And that's made so clear. And even at the end, like, Marlene says, you were the one person I didn't want to be indebted to.
Right.
Because she knows exactly what he's like. And she knows he's going to call up a favor in the future.
Well, yeah,
And
or he's
ultimately, he doesn't get the opportunity to, because after that, she spills the beans on what's going on with Ellie.
I mean,
and
yeah, that's actually toast. That's how I took that. Is less the like, oh, I didn't want to owe you a favor because you're gonna come collect. It's more like this moment we're just about to experience is exactly why I didn't want you to get involved, right? Of like,
yeah,
okay, like he cares about her now, great. There's a non-zero chance we're all gonna die. Like, you know, it's like
yeah, but I don't think that she knew he cared about her at that point, because he'd just come around.
Oh no, I totally disagree.
No, because they'd knocked them both out outside.
Right.
And
but how does he react as soon as she wakes up? As soon as he wakes up? Think about it, right? He wakes up and he's like, where is she? And he's like, bring me to her now. Right? And he immediately gets aggressive with her. And they have to push him to the ground. And that's when she's like, look, I see what happened. I'm sorry. Like, I care about her just as much as you do, if not more. And this is what we're doing. So walk him out to the highway, and if he tries anything, shoot him, but put him on his way, right? Like, I think she very much reads that situation immediately and is like, I get it. This is your chance to walk away. And if you turn around, we're going to kill you. And obviously that's not how that plays out, but I think she definitely knew as soon as he immediately gets up and physically comes at her and is like, I need you to take me to her right now. Right? Like, that whole second is like, uh-oh.
Yeah, because he's a powerful man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's turned himself into like a killing machine. That's what him and Sam, not Sam, him and his brother used to do. It's Sam, right?
No. Sam is oh no.
Sam's the kid.
Sam's that's Nathan Drake's brother.
Sam is Drake's brother, yeah.
It's Tommy.
Yeah, it's Tommy, yeah. I was like, no, it's Sam, no, it's not.
It's so funny because you said it and I was like, no, that's the brother, but I'm like, but no, that is, yeah, no, you were right there in that Naughty Dog universe, right? You were in the right camp.
That's what he did with Tommy, right?
Right.
They killed people for money.
I mean, that's the thing,
they
right?
Were mercenaries,
like,
essentially.
Joel's not that person anymore, but he's able to tap into it when he needs. Like, he can be a ruthless motherfucker when he needs to be, as evidenced by shit. I don't know if you watched the recap at the beginning of the month. It's just like, let's watch Joel kill like 10 guys in a row.
No, I didn't see that, but like,
or maybe it wasn't the recap. Maybe it was at the end of the episode. But like, they had a hot cut of like all the guys he kills to save Ellie, or like.
Well, I feel like the first one that gave me a real reaction was when they got kind of taken down and tricked when they roll up with the truck, right? And they're in that like laundromat or something, or wherever it is, and he tells Ellie to go and crawl through the space and hide, essentially, because he's gonna kill these guys, and he is fucking brutal with them, like absolutely brutal. And then again when Ellie's been taken in the episode with David, and he's just like, you're going to tell me where it is, and if your friend doesn't tell me, then I'm going to kill you, and he just kills him anyway.
Dude, that is like one of my favorite scenes in the game, and like the way that Pedro when he walks up and he goes, "Oh no, it's okay. I believe him." I was like, oh. Fuck. Like, because that's the thing, right? Is like that's the whole thing with Joel, right? Is like you go on this adventure with him and you see this tenderness and you see the father in him and all these things, right? But like that's the whole fucking thing, baby. Like people contain multitudes, and like there are people, right, who like especially in this kind of world, right, where it's like, you know, like you said, like he's brutal with those people. It's like, well, yeah, they're trying to kill him. You know, it's like if he's not, and he's old, right? He's not who he used to. Like if he's not as brutal and ruthless as he can be in that interaction, they both die, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like I think it's the same thing with like when he like doesn't show mercy, right? Like we talked about earlier, right? In those final moments, it's like, well, you know, it's like loose ends make for exactly what happens later on, right? Like ultimately, it was a loose end he wasn't aware of, but like it comes home to roost no matter what, right? Like that's what part 2, the whole of part 2 gets set in motion because of something like that, where he left a loose end that he didn't realize, and like
I think he knew that loose end was there, right? Like, there's no way that he could think that the promise and the swearing to her at the end of part 1 was going to be enough.
Oh, no, I don't even mean that. That's a good point. I was thinking more literally in the sense of Abby showing up is like the other shoe dropping. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, but that's the reason, like, the connection with Ellie's been lost, and like she's not talking to him anymore, and that relationship's kind of been destroyed because she finds out he lied to her.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, right? Is I think like Druckmann described that in the like post, you know, episode discussion thing where he said it's like that to him, like the way he thinks of that choice is like that it's very much how a parent lies to their child to protect them from the truth, right? Of like, there are times where I think I know better than you, and if I need to lie to you to, you know, keep you safe, then that's what I'm gonna do, right? And like, I think that's, I you know, it's, I don't know if he necessarily thinks he'll get away with it, or if he's just like, if you hate me forever,
this is what I need to do.
Yeah,
like, we're home now, we're safe. If you hate me forever, then fine. But I protected you.
I
and
still
I've done my
saved you,
job.
right? You still get to have a life, and that was all he cared about at the end, right? Is that like, I just want her to get a chance, you know? And like you said, it's like, who could blame him? And with that, when you think about it that way, you know, I mean, I guess a lot of people, right? Obviously, that's why there's so much debate. But that's right. Like, to bring it back to something I said earlier, I think it's an extremely selfish choice, but it's a human choice. It's an extremely understandable choice, I think.
Well, I feel like everyone's like that, right? It's like, I can't give a fuck about some strangers that I'm potentially saving, but my family and my friends and the group of people I know, if I can save them, that's all I care about. And I want to make sure that they're safe. And Ellie was all Joel had left because everyone else had died in his life. Apart from his brother, I guess Tommy exists, but still, like, Tommy's making his own life, his own family. He's got a kid on the way.
Yeah, I think it's the thing that, like, even with that, like, I just don't think he could have taken it. You know, like, I don't think he felt strong enough to endure another loss like that. You know, whereas like even like losing Tess, right, is like different than this. You know, than like losing a child. Like, that's something that, you know, you hope no person ever has to go through, right? Like that's like the adage, like whenever that thing happens, is like, it's like, oh geez, like a parent should never have to bury their child, right? And it's like,
I mean, he never got that. He never got that closure. He never got to bury his child. He's taken away by the military. That's when he tries to kill himself. He's put in that camp to kind of get stitched up.
Yeah.
And then he's moved to the QZ. And it's like, he never got that closure that funerals offer to people. He never got to bury his daughter. It was just, she got taken from me, and that was it. And I didn't get an opportunity to even say goodbye.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where like it doesn't justify every bad thing that he's done, but it certainly explains it, I think. And like I think that's such a huge part of
If that doesn't justify everything that he does, but I feel like the world that was born after the kind of pandemic, right? After Cordyceps took over everyone, I feel like a lot of that does justify his actions because you've got to be out for yourself. There's raiders, there's Fedra, there's people trying to manipulate you and control you and tell you what to do. And he's very much not that person. He is his own man, and he wants some level of agency. And being in the QZ, you don't get that. You get posted somewhere, you've got your job, and he wants to kind of explore that and do something else. And he's got to learn to survive outside of the QC. I guess he doesn't need to become a mercenary, a gun for hire.
I think that's the thing is like it's like not only that though, because I think even becoming like a merc is like not as bad as like they were raiders. Like they admit that, right? Like that's why like in the moment when they get attacked, right? Like Ellie's like, how did you know that was going to happen? He's like, I've been.
He's like, I did this before.
Well, he says he's been on both sides of it, right? And it's like, yeah, like. That's not cool. Like Joel definitely killed innocent people to survive. And like that makes him a bad dude. Like that makes him no better than But
does that make him bad? That's the thing. Like he did that to look after his people and himself, and he did what he had to do. Does that make him a bad person? And I feel like that's what I mean about the whole gray area thing and that like morality around it.
It's more morally gray than I think it would be in a normal scenario. But I don't think that explains it away. I don't think that makes it not a bad action, right? Like, I mean,
no, and you see Tommy kind of taking that.
That's why he leaves.
He's really remorseful about what he did and wants to go make a life with Maria. And
I think that's the thing. That's why
like, you see Ellie asking Maria, just do you know everything he did? Like, because she's there judging Joel. Maria's judging Joel for what he does and what he did. And Ellie's just like, your husband's no different,
right? But I think he is, because it's not an I think Tommy's remorse over what they did, and Joel's like, oh, we did what we needed to survive. Like I think that does speak. That's different. Like that. Those are two different kinds of people. Like I think you should feel bad about doing that, right? Even if it was for survival, like. You killed an innocent person, right? Like, that's every single bad guy that we interacted with over the course of this story, right? Like, you talked about this earlier. Like, how almost every group of people they meet is up to some heinous shit. And, like think about Ellie's reaction to, I can't think of his name. The preacher, the bad guy. David.
Oh, David?
Yeah, David. Like, her reaction to their group. Right, and how the unsavory things they've decided to do to survive, right? Like it's like, I mean, if
what a great casting for David as well. Like, genuinely,
yeah, he did great.
It still blows my mind that that's Nolan North in the game.
I know,
like,
I know,
mind blown to me.
I know. It's like this guy's Nathan Drake. What?
Yeah, I just want to jump back a second to that episode with Tommy, episode 6, Kin. Because I feel like that's when Joel's relationship with Ellie kind of shifts, and he realizes that he cares for her more than just cargo. Because up until that point, he's very much treated her as just as cargo. But that's the point when
I think it starts before then, but
Tommy. Yeah, but that's the point where he tells Tommy, you got to take her, you got to look after her, you got to get her to where she needs to be. It's no longer about collecting money. It's about making sure that she's safe and she gets there okay. And she overhears him, and she's very much upset about that. And then he changes his mind, and he's like, no, I can't leave her. I don't want to leave her. I want to make sure I'm with her, and I want to look after her, and I'm the best person to do that because I care about her in a way that nobody else in this world does anymore.
What kills me, right, is again, and it's the irony of this thing. He makes that choice for her safety, right? Is like I'm
and then it's a selfish reason again. It's like, oh, I need to be there.
But he also says you at least deserve a choice. So if you want me to go, then I'm going to do it, right? And it's like, and then what does he do? when it's time for her to get to make a choice, he takes it away, right? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a thought I'm just having right now. I really wonder what would happen in this story if it is Tommy instead.
I feel like Tommy dies, and that's it. That's the end of it.
Yeah.
And then Ellie's left on her own, and I don't think. I think maybe she stays with David. I don't know. That's a very like interesting kind of thought piece to kind of go down that rabbit hole, because
I'm imagining he gets to the finish
Tommy
line.
survives.
I'm imagining he gets to the finish line, right? And he gets the same information that Joel gets. Does he walk away? I don't know.
Well, yeah, he doesn't care. I don't think he cares in that way. And I don't think
he knows Joel cares, though. I don't think he has it in him to kill a hospital full of people, though.
Yeah, I don't think he can commit those actions in the same way that Joel does. But I don't think he even gets there at that point, because think of all of the shit they had to go through prior to that. You know, they had to get through a cannibal camp and deal with like an injury and getting penicillin off them, and even after that in the game, there's a lot
dude,
more.
Though. Like, he's a tough guy. He's not. I don't know. I don't think he has the same grit that Joel has, but he is like 10 years younger.
Yeah.
I don't know. Right? Because, like, I think that's supposed to be the implication, is that he's quite a few years younger than Joel.
I think he's younger, yeah.
He's definitely younger. They made a point about how Joel is, like, old and his body's all fucked up, and how Tommy's still young and, still feels young and is still in a lot better shape than him. And
well, yeah, I mean, it's 20 years on, right? He's apparently Joel's apparently in his 50s,
right?
In part 1, 51 to 52.
He makes a joke about being 55 in like one of the earlier episodes when like I remember Ellie's giving him shit and he's like, I'm almost 55 years old. Like, give me a fucking break, like.
And I think Tommy's got to still be in his 40s, if that's the case.
That's what I'm thinking, like 45 maybe, late 40s.
Apparently he was, in the game, he's born early to mid-1980s. So I guess that would make him in his 40s in the show, because they've kind of shifted it by 10 years or so.
Yeah,
everyone's a little bit older in the show, aren't they? Because it all kicked off in 2003, but we see what's happening in 2023 rather than 2013. Or 2012.
Yeah.
In the game.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. Either way, I guess let's put a pin on this part of it, and we can talk about, I guess what comes next. But yeah, I think to just like, I don't know, put a period on the sentence. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed this first season, and I think it was a lot better than I expected. I thought it would be good, but I think it ended up being pretty great. And I think particularly if you're someone who, hasn't played the games, either because you don't play games or that's like not your kind of game or something like that. I think it's cool that there's this other way to engage with this narrative now, and that it like I said, I think I said this earlier, and if not, I'll say it now. It crossed the bar I think that it needs to, which is as an adaptation, like I think you need to be able to be something that is good enough and stands independent from the thing it's based on. And I think this clears that bar. I think even if, you were never going to play the game, like the show's worth watching, and I think even if you have that relationship,
if you did, I think it makes the game even richer. I think.
I agree. And I think it definitely has given me a deepened sense of connection to the world in a way that, I already loved both of the games, but yeah, I think it definitely gave me a new appreciation for certain angles of it, that were things that I had already touched on, but like getting to see them explored in this new way and recontextualizing the same themes and exploring them in different ways. I think it was like a really fun exercise, and it was a lot more rewarding than I thought it would be, considering, I think they did a good job of staying faithful where it was important to stay faithful, and taking opportunities to do something fresh where there were opportunities for that, right? Like season 3 being the standout episode for both of us, when it's the one that's the least faithful to the games, I think is pretty special. That's a really cool achievement for the show.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think 3 was most special to me, and 7, I think Left Behind was also pretty special in for a different way, like I said. But yeah, I thought this was phenomenal. Like I said at the top, this was, I think, the best video game adaptation we've ever had. Um,
Agreed.
you compare this to Naughty Dog's other adaptation, the Uncharted movie, I just think it's night and day.
I still haven't seen that, and I want to watch it now that this is over, and just like for a point of comparison.
Just like rip it apart and be like, what is this trash? Where's Craig Mazin? Get him on the script.
Yo, I'll tell you what, Craig, I don't know what else Craig has done besides Chernobyl, but
the Scary Movies.
No.
Yeah, he worked on the Scary Movie trilogy. Scary Movie 3, 4, Identity Thief, the Hangover movies.
What?
Yeah, that.
I'm looking at his filmography right now. This makes no fucking sense. It's not even the first Scary Movie where it was a novel idea. He got involved during like the worst stretch. Scary Movie 3, 4, superhero movie, The Hangover Part 2, and Hangover Part 3. It's like all the bad ones in these franchises, right? Like, oh my God, that's incredible.
I think you do that shit to kind of be able to do the stuff you really want to do, which was Chernobyl, and then The Last of Us.
It's just wild to me that like this is his like, and he was like he did The Huntsman, Winter's War, like that's the like really, and then like his on TV, his 2 credits, he did 1 episode of Mythic Quest, great show, awesome, great, but then his 2 other credits are Chernobyl and The Last of Us. What? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And like The Last of Us and Chernobyl were both like phenomenal. Like Chernobyl was the reason I was excited for this, right? I loved that show. I thought it was incredible. And he wrote and directed and like created that. That was his piece.
2-time Emmy Award-winning series. Yeah, Chernobyl kicked ass. Are you kidding me? It's just so funny that he went from writing like D-list raunchy comedies to 2, I would say probably 2 of, if not the 2 best prestige HBO series in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think people really love Game of Thrones, but yeah,
that's over now, though. I guess House of Dragons is new, but like the original Game of Thrones came out earlier than that, right? Like I'm talking the last, 2019, 2018, right? Like.
Yeah, those and the White Lotus,
yeah,
and also Succession is very much up there for me as well. There's some really good shit over at HBO.
HBO's kick ass.
Yeah, they really are. They've become the prestige place again. It felt like Netflix kind of took that away from them for a while,
a couple of years, yeah.
But I feel like they've kind of lost it again, and HBO's the place to go again.
That's the thing. HBO never lost it. There were just other people that were doing it on their level, and now it's like we're back. We're the only ones who can do this at this quality and consistency.
We'll have to wait and see what the God of War series over at Amazon's like. Because that's a PlayStation Productions as well, and that's going to get comparisons to this.
Dude,
is it going to be in any way as good?
There's also the Horizon show at Netflix, and I'm like, oh boy, those shows are going to look so bad in comparison to this show. I think even if they're great, they're going to struggle to hit the heights of what Craig, was able to achieve here with Neil and the rest of the team.
But I'd love to know the budget on this. It must have been a lot of money.
Yeah. And I mean, you think about those other 2 properties, they both need way bigger budgets to be as good.
Yeah. Or unless you do the whole like the Mandalorian, right? If you've seen the big stage thing, the dome that they do it on, you could potentially go there and do it on that, and the whole thing's like a CGI set piece on like the big dome that they do it on,
though,
to be able to have those backdrops.
But still, like, I mean, fuck, dude, like the amount of effort it's gonna take to like make giant robot dinosaurs, or to make like the world serpent, right? Like it's like, I don't know, dude. I don't know. Because I think so much of what was great about this was like a lot of it was practical effects. Obviously accentuated by CGI, but like the clickers, right? Like so much of that is just
that's physical. Yeah,
it's just good makeup, Yeah, and like that's not cheap. And it's harder to do with crazy monsters and stuff. I don't know, dude. I feel like this has set a bar that other shows or other video game adaptations are really going to struggle to live up to, because they've all pretty much been bad, and then this one was great. It's got like a 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. Like,
Yeah, the last episode is trending the worst at the moment. It's like 85 compared to the rest of the
I mean,
episode.
which is still better than most things can hope for.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, and I think that's like that divisive ending. But yeah,
Nobody wants to
love.
see the good guy that you decided was a good guy be a bad guy.
I'm gonna have to find that 50-minute special because I didn't end up watching it.
What?
The 50 minutes after. Apparently they aired a 50-minute special after the finale, chronicling the production of.
Oh, really?
Yeah, chronicling the production of the whole show, and I have not seen that, so I'm gonna have to find that.
All right, nice. Yeah, I definitely want to watch that. I want to listen to the podcast that they did too with Troy Baker. I think was the host of it, and everything is apparently pretty good. A friend of mine was saying they were listening to every episode after each episode, and it was if you're a behind the scenes geek, it's a good listen. All right, so we're going to talk about the future of The Last of Us for a second here, but before that, let me remind you that this very special episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of March. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi Wakahula, Snackago, and Ty the Dude. If you want to become a Patreon producer just like they did, head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find links to all the ways you can support us or get involved with the show, including writing in, joining our Discord, or catching some of our other sister shows like the FlipScreen Games podcast, where we talked more about the news here, about the future of The Last of Us TV show. So if you want to hear some more of that discussion with our buddy Max, go check that out. We got a bunch of other cool shows. I hope you'll go check one of them out if you're a first-timer. So let's round things off here by talking about where the story goes from here, right? So as we discussed on the FlipScreen Games podcast this week, if you want to go hear that full story, please go tune in over there. Neil Druckmann had an interview with GQ this week where he was talking about the future of the show. And he suggested that the series may have a season 3 while they're adapting Last of Us Part 2, right? Obviously, we just talked about how the story of The Last of Us proper is about 14 hours, whereas, like, I think to beat Last of Us Part 2 is, like, closer to
like
40, right? Like,
yeah.
It's pretty long. And
it's, I think, too long in places, but yeah.
Yeah, and, I think that's... Okay, it's 24 hours, so it's not quite that long, but it's an additional 10 hours. So you could see how they could flesh that out. We didn't talk about it too much on the show because I didn't want to spoil things, especially because Max is fresh on The Last of Us and hasn't engaged with that part of the story yet. But I think it makes sense, right? Like, I think you could easily see season 2 be The Last of Us Part 2 from Ellie's perspective. And then the season 2 cliffhanger is that moment and again, full spoilers, right? But that moment where you think Tommy gets shot, and then she goes to rush Abby, and then it's like cut, and then we start with Abby.
Yes, yeah,
I think that's how you do it, right? And you start season 3
so
as Abby, and you don't acknowledge that's what's going to happen.
Do you think they start with just like you see Abby's side and you don't talk? They don't show Joel and they don't show Ellie in the same way that the game starts like that?
I don't know. I don't know if you start it that same way on TV because I don't think you have to. I think I could very easily see Last of Us Part 2 picks up. Time has passed. We're in the community, right? Ellie's a little bit older. Everything's going on. There's clear tension. And then you have the scene with Joel and Tommy go out and Joel gets killed and everything happens the way that it happens. And then we follow Ellie's journey until that break point. I don't even think I think you introduce Abby as a character, right? In that first episode or in through that conflict. But I don't really think we need to see her perspective until season 3. And I think that would almost be more interesting.
I don't know. I kind of feel like we will. I'd actually really love to see them leave Joel and Ellie in kind of the commune for a while, and then I want to see what's going on with Lev. I want to see what's going on with Abby. I
I
want to
do, but
explore the world
I don't think you
outside.
can do that in season 2. I think if you do that in season 2, it lessens the impact. I think you need to have a whole season 2 where we're following Ellie, and it's like Ellie's the main character, and they're the bad guys, and Ellie is the good guy, and this is what's happening. And then when you have that perspective shift, that's why Last of Us Part 2 works so well, right? Is you have that moment of
You think they killed Joel right at the beginning of season 2? Then
I think you have to. I think you have to.
He's done.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I think if you don't, I think you lessen the impact of the story. I think it has to be episode 1 of that season. Yeah, like
that's the end of episode 1, I think, where it's just like everyone's shocked, like, whoa, you've killed off
and her
the main character,
and Ellie screaming, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's how it.
Yeah,
ends.
you're probably right, and I could see it following a similar trend. But I also think we're then gonna see more backstory. We're gonna see more of,
definitely
like, how that happened.
But I think you couch it there.
Yeah. I agree. I kind of agree with you. I think we're probably going to be surprised. I could see season 2 and 3, or so part 2 can easily be season 2, 3, 4, potentially carry on and go further than that. There's a lot to explore in that game. There's a lot more characters involved. There's a lot more kind of, I guess, groups of people shown, and we've got all of that we can explore.
Yeah, because like,
but I don't feel like we really learned a lot about Lev and his sister in the game. It was just like, oh, these people are just like, a cult, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to accept him for him.
We don't get to like see much of it, really. Yeah, it's like we meet the Seraphites, right? And then it's like we hear about it through like Lev and Yara talking about it, but it's not really something that's like shown intimately. Whereas like I could see them doing a Bill style episode about Lev where it is like, their whole journey of like, like coming to terms, like recognizing their identity, coming to terms with it, experimenting with it, the fallout that happens from that, the points where they're on their own before they meet Abby. Like there's so much there that we literally know what happens because they tell us what happens, but we don't experience it in the same way, right? Whereas like, I think that's very similar to like what they did with Bill and Frank. Like you made the point multiple times. Like Frank's a character who's dead in the game. We don't even meet him really, right? Like, and we got to know so much about him that we didn't know prior. So I think Lev is probably the character who stands to benefit from that the most, being a main character that like, we only know so much about, but I guess that's also true for all these characters, right? Like at the end of the day, like we only like with Ellie, right? Like we wouldn't really have, if it wasn't for Left Behind, you don't really get a huge exploration.
Yeah, and I want to know more about Dina as well. I want to know more about what's going on in the commune. I want to know more about Tommy. I want to know like what's going on with Tommy and Maria, and how did that kind of relationship pan out? And,
I mean, I'd love to know
and stuff.
I'd love to know more about Abby before her trauma. You don't really get a sense of who she was before that,
And just thinking about, there's some episodes I can't wait to see, like the kind of moment where they're going around the museum. Joel and Ellie are going around the museum, and there's like that section where she goes into an actual spaceship, right? Because in series 1 we saw her thinking that the car was a spaceship, and he's like, "This is your first time in a car, huh?" And she actually gets to go in like a spaceship cockpit and stuff, and she's like really excited, and it's like that childlike reaction that she never really got to have. She didn't really have a childhood.
Yeah, and it's like, oh Jesus, there's so much there. There's so much there because like that whole scene is just like, it's so heavy when you think about it in the context of the fact that they never made up, and it's like I hope they give us more of that. I hope they give us more of like the difficult in between stuff that they were trying to work through, like there's like that scene on the porch, right, where she's like,
oh God, yeah, that's like the end of the game.
That is like the end, yeah.
The end of the game.
And and he's like, like I hope you can forgive me, and she's like, I don't know if I can, but I want to try. It was like, fuck, like fuck. I hope they
Yeah.
I hope they give us more space with that. Also, like, for what it's worth, right? Like, I think we all want to see more of Pedro Pascal. So the more
Yes,
they
I
can...
do. He's phenomenal. I think Bella Ramsey's phenomenal as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm very down to watch Bella carry, the next however many seasons. But yeah, I mean, Pedro Pascal's a delight. I think he's just he's a great actor, and I also think he's just effortlessly charming. Like, he's very, he's one of those guys where it's like you just want to watch him, right? Like, I'd watch him read the phone book, and seeing the depth, like the amount of room he has to play with this character, where there are those moments of levity and lightness and humanity, and then the difference between, like, I don't know if you remember this scene as well as I do, but it's the one we were talking about earlier where he says that Tommy should take her, right? And she brings up Sarah and is like, I'm not her, and everything. And there's a moment where, like, he's looking at her and he's like trying to be empathetic, and then she brings up Sarah, and just you see his eyes go black.
He's dead.
And it was like, ooh,
yeah,
Pedro.
And he's
Pedro.
And he just says don't. He just says don't.
Don't. Like, not another word. And it's like,
yeah,
okay, all right, shit. So to take it back to, because we could talk about this all day, honestly. To take it back to the length, I guess, question, right? Like, there is that question, because one of the things that we called out was that he didn't specifically say if it would be 3 seasons, could it be 4? Like, there's some room there for...
I think it's 2 or 3, and then I think we get a part 3 game, and I feel like we're going to get a TV series that kind of explores the game.
I don't know. Well. Like, it's so tough, because it's like, I could see that for sure, right? Like, I think, if you recall, there was conversation a while ago about, like, could there be a Last of Us Part 3? Like, is the narrative going to continue? And, Neil at the time said, we don't do something that we're not extremely passionate about. So unless we had a really good, compelling story to keep the story going, then it ends at Part 2, right? And
you don't think in the writer's room with Craig, Neil's got some juicy ideas flowing, and those two can't cook up a new story for a part 3 video game? I think it's kind of feels inevitable after you see the creative influence that Craig's had on the TV show.
Maybe.
And what they could explore even more.
Maybe. I don't know, though. It's like, that's such a big question. Is like, so then what? Is, like, Craig gonna come work on Last of Us Part 3? Like, I don't know.
Why not?
I don't know.
Like, why not?
I guess it's literally possible, but it would be unprecedented. And I guess that's the weird part of it, And it's like...
Yeah, but it's kind of unprecedented to have, like, the writer of a video game go and direct a TV episode and write a TV episode.
You're not wrong.
It's like, he did that. He's like the head guy at Naughty Dog, and he took time out from making video games to go make a TV series. It's just like...
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're definitely right about that. It's just, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I think I probably feel like it's more likely than it's ever been, given that, like, the story is having an unprecedented amount of attention, and also, like, Neil's back in that world, so maybe that is getting his gears turning again. And it's also like, we know he's worked on it, right? Like, they've definitely made comments, like he said to the Hollywood Reporter around the premiere of the show, that he thinks that there was, quote unquote, more story to tell, right? Like, he talked about how he and the co-writer of Part 2, Haley Gross, did an outline for a story that they weren't working on, but that he hoped they would one day get to show people, that explores what happens after the game a little bit. So there's that. But then, like, I think he also kind of famously, this was the quote I always think of. He said, so this was with an interview with BuzzFeed where he was talking about it, and he said, and I'll paraphrase a little bit from the article, but it says, Naughty Dog hasn't made a decision yet about what's next for the mainline Last of Us series, and it doesn't feel pressure to either. And this is from Druckmann. We're very privileged that our publisher is Sony. They have supported us every step of the way to follow our passions, meaning that just because something is successful, people think that there's all this pressure that we have to make a sequel. That's not the case. For us, Uncharted was insanely successful. Uncharted 4 was our best-selling game, or was one of our best-selling games. And we're able to put our final brushstroke on that story and say we're done. We're moving on. Likewise, with The Last of Us, it's up to us whether we want to continue or not. Our process is the same thing we did when we did part 2, which is if we can come up with a compelling story that has this universal message and statement about love, just like the first and second game did, then we will tell that story. If we can't come up with something, we have a very strong ending with part 2, and that will be the end.
Yeah. And I really think that for me, I feel like they're going to come up with a story. They have to. I think it just makes sense that they are in that writer's room. They're chucking ideas around, and something like a little seed is planted in Neil's brain, and he's just like, yeah, this could make a great game.
It's also so what's the timeline on that then? You're telling me we're gonna spend 5 years or whatever making The Last of Us Part 3, and then we come back and do the show?
Season 2 is meant to be 2025.
Right.
So you've got 2025, then potentially 2026 and 2027 for like part 2's TV series. I feel like by 2027 we could have a part 3 game, and you come back in like
it's ambitious, my guy. That's my ambition. You're telling me Neil Druckmann is writing and executive producing a 3rd game in this franchise while working on 2 seasons of television with his boy Craig?
Yeah, I do. I could see that. Well, you get Haley to work on it, right? I feel like the stories that they're developing in that writer's room, you kind of take those and you go with them. I think 4 to 5 years is about the average production of a AAA game.
Not anymore though. I think now it skews more towards 5, 6.
Quite possibly, or maybe they do something with the multiplayer
factions. Yeah. I don't know. Like, do people want that? Do people want to watch a season about characters that aren't Joel and Ellie, or like, are you getting into Walking Dead?
I don't know. Like, I felt like, do I want to play a game that's not where I'm not controlling Joel? And I did. I played an entire game where I wasn't controlling Joel and he wasn't in most of the story.
Yeah, but like, it's about Ellie though.
I got to play Abby, and I played Abby for like 10 hours.
Yeah, but you're right. But that feels earned. Whereas, like, is this going to be just a totally different group of characters? If that's the case, like, does that hit the same way? I don't know.
I think you can take characters that were introduced in part 2 and you kind of go with it. And you have those legacy characters around, like Ellie and her kid and Tommy and Maria and everyone in the commune. But I want to see what happens with Lev and what happens with Abby and getting out of that torture chamber that they were in at the end of the game. It's like, where does Abby go from there? Like, what happened?
I'm definitely interested in that. I guess it's just a question of like, I don't know. I guess of like where you go from here overall, you know? Because like, are we at a point where we move away from Ellie, or is there more there with her story? Like, I think there are.
I kind of feel like you put a pin on Ellie's story at this point. I feel like that's kind of almost run its course, and I think that's fine because they introduced enough new characters in part 2.
Yeah,
and they can introduce more new characters in part 3.
I almost feel like if that happens, though, I feel like you stop. Like, I feel like if you're at the point where you're not continuing the thread of.
It doesn't have to be the thread of Joel and Ellie, I don't think. Like, I feel like Abby was such a strong character.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you clocked that Laura Bailey was in the finale of
No.
She was one of the people behind the surgeon in the operating
One of the nurses?
She posted on Twitter like a picture of her wearing the like surgeon's mask. They gave her like a little cameo in there, which I thought was sweet.
That reminds me of something that was funny where I was watching the after the episode thing, and Troy Baker was talking about it, and he was like, "Oh, like I was so excited to get to play an actual character. Like I thought I was going to be like I thought they were going to make me a clicker or something, like that would be my cameo." And it was so cool that I got lines.
Yeah, I know. I thought so too. I was like, "Oh, it's great they gave him a meaty piece."
Yeah, he really got to do something.
Ashley.
You know.
Yeah. Ashley's was way more impactful for me because it was like,
it's
impactful to the storyline. You could have given anyone to be David's partner.
Right. right. Yeah, it's like, whatever. I think that felt more just like, let's get Troy in it somehow, whereas
Yeah.
like
I kind of want
Ashley's feels like kind of poetic in a way.
Yeah, but I kind of want Ashley to come back in season 2 and explore more of Anna's story and how did she get to there? Like, what happened? Where's Ellie's father? Like, what happened there? I
I don't
really want
know.
to
I
know.
think
Like, how did she meet Marlene? How did the Fireflies come to be? There's so much you could explore as backstory.
I think there's a lot of stuff like that, though, that is more interesting with Neil just telling us the answer than actually seeing it. I think you run into like Star Wars prequel territory where it's like in New Hope, right? Like there's a line about how a lot of good people die to get these plans, and I think that's kind of more interesting than Rogue One being like, here are those good people dying to get those plans. It's like, all right.
Rogue One for me was one of the most interesting Star Wars movies. I like that movie a lot.
That's a whole other conversation. I don't dislike it, but there's a lot of hype around it that I've never quite understood, but that's
fair.
That's a whole other podcast. We'll have to do that one on a One More Thing sometime or something.
But yeah, to kind of wrap this up, I think I'm going to be watching with bated breath. I feel like, as I said on this week's FlipScreen Games podcast, which will probably be out after this, which is weird.
Oh
We
yeah,
recorded it before, it'll be out after. But I thought that the show was gonna fill that void and that hole for me playing The Last of Us. I felt like, I don't need to play The Last of Us Part 1 because the HBO series is coming out, and it's had the opposite effect. I want to go back. I want to explore that world even more.
I really want to go replay it now. Yeah, I'm feeling the same way.
And I want to go play the PS5 version and see it with all the kind of bells and whistles, because I neither of us bothered playing that one. And it's coming to PC at the end of this month, which is great, and it's $20 cheaper on PC than it is on console, so it might be a good time for me to pick it up, play it on the deck, and kind of explore that world again.
You just said yesterday you were going to play it on PS5, you flip-flopper.
Yeah, then I realized it's £70 on PS5 and it's $50 on Steam, so it's like, this is a big chunk of change that I'm saving there just by playing it on a different place.
I'm just gonna keep my eyes out for a sale. It's got to be coming.
Yeah.
Anyway,
when it comes to PlayStation Plus.
Very true. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us here on this very special presentation of the FlipScreen Games podcast. If you guys want to write in and let us know your thoughts on Season 1 of The Last of Us or your hopes for Season 2, 3, and beyond, make sure you get in touch in all the ways that you can. Discord is probably the best way to keep the conversation rolling between episodes, but of course you can write into us at questions@flipscreen.games. Bunch of ways you can get involved. All the ways that you can get involved, you'll find links to them over at flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can become a Patreon producer, get your name read on the air, get a bunch of other perks and goodies, all kinds of good stuff. However you choose to get involved and show your support, we thank you for tuning into this very special episode of the FlipScreen Games podcast. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. Keep surviving, I guess. I don't know. Watch more Last of Us. We'll see you next time.